Becky, and today I'm going to be reviewing a non-fiction self-help book which is called The Subtle Art of Not Giving a Fuck by Mark Manson. So I'm not normally the kind of person who's reading non-fiction books and self-help books in particular, but this was a gift from a friend and it was actually kind of a really thoughtful gift and it was really helpful, and it was given in a way that was meant to help me later in life rather than right now at this second, which I thought was really nice. Despite it being a gift, it definitely sat on my shelf a lot longer than it should have, but I thought I read it at a really good time in my life, and I think I've read it at like the right moment I needed to pick it up because I was getting very stressed with uni and work and all the other little bits in life that kind of add up. And it basically came as like a gentle reminder to just not give a fuck about the little things, which was really good for me, and it helped me calm down a lot. A lot of people assume that self-help books are often quite mushy and emotional and kind of whiny, I guess. But Mark Manson really brings together this book in a humorous way and kind of a sense of relief, rather than anything that's a bit too, emotional for you, that's going to make you feel sad. The language itself is extremely to the point. He's not cutting corners, he's very blunt with how he's talking, or how he's writing, I should say. The book also kind of calls you out on any maybe not so great behaviour that you're currently doing without being too harsh about it as well. Many of his points make complete sense. I don't want to talk about them too much because you should really buy the book rather than me reiterating it. However, as with any self-help book, it's really up to you to take his key points, understand them in relation to yourself, and then apply them to your life rather than using it as kind of a handbook where you'll probably fail. It's really not a how-to guide on how to not give a fuck at all. One of the key things that I think people think when they see the book is that it's a book about not giving a fuck about everything and not caring about all of the important things in life, which isn't true. The main point Manson tries to make is that you should try not to give a fuck about the little things, the things that don't really matter but you expend so much energy on when at the end of the day they're not affecting your life in the ways that the bigger things that you should be caring about are. For example, caring about what other people think of you who you're never going to see again in the middle of the street. There's just not enough time in the day or the energy in your mind to care about that kind of thing. So instead you should care about things like your friends and your family and your job and your hobbies and the things you're interested in. And I think we've all been kind of very guilty of the fact that we've cared too much about little things that don't matter. So it is a really good point to drive home, and it made me think a lot about all the little things that were adding to my stress that didn't need to be adding to my stress at the time. And another main factor is finding the values that you align yourself with how you measure yourself to be happy or successful. If you're constantly measuring yourself against an ideal that is out of your control, then you're never going to feel happy or successful because you'll never be able to attain. For example, he had lots of examples in the book. I think one of them was, I can't remember exactly what it was, but it was basically this singer, songwriter, music artist became extremely famous in his own right, but he was never happy because his values for what he measured himself against were that he had been kicked out of a band before that had become a lot more famous than him, and he wasn't with them because he'd been kicked out, and that affected how he viewed his success for the rest of his life. I think it's a really good point. I think it's really important in the social media age to see which values you actually align yourself to. For example, am I aligning myself to the values of how many followers I've got, or is that never going to make me happy because someone's always going to have more followers than me? And it kind of makes you think in a different way, which I really liked about Manson's book, was that it made me think, whilst it was giving me examples of other people, it made me think of my own examples for myself and how I should be trying to change my values and how I thought about these things to reduce the stresses in my life. Manson's storytelling of his examples are really great, and they really drive the points home that he's trying to make. Obviously with any kind of book like this, they are self-selected points. He's definitely picked them because they do reiterate his point, and obviously you can find stories that maybe say something completely different to that. But what's really good about his examples were that they weren't written like a textbook, they weren't boring. He's very good at writing in a way that makes you engage with it as if it's like a fiction book rather than a non-fiction. I would like to point out that his writing style and his bluntness and his to the pointness can come across as kind of smug and kind of arrogant and kind of like Manson has got all of his shit together, when I don't think that's fully the case. And I've not read any of his other books, I don't know if I've not read his blog, I don't know if this is the case, but the way he talks, and he's quite abrasive I would say, might not sit well with some people. For me it was very, very British. It was how a lot of me and my friends talk to one another like when we're giving advice, and it came across to me very, very well. I don't think it would come across the same way to maybe all people, especially if you're a little bit more sensitive, or if you're the kind of person that needs a bit of a softer touch rather than the blunt and abrasive way that he talks. But again, that's with any book. The way the writer writes the story or writes the information is always a key factor as to whether someone likes the book. For me personally it was okay, others it might not be, and I have seen reviews where people really, really don't like that aspect of the book. I did have 3 good takeaways from this book. First one is to never try to be anything but who you are. I'm trying really hard with coming back off hiatus to move myself forward in a way that's very, very personal to me. As with one of my posts last week, I was very personal. I talk how I would talk to my friends. I've always tried to do that, so I think it's working very well for me. The second one is happiness is a work in progress and not a destination. I think this is really key for me right now as I'm currently looking for jobs, and I keep telling myself I'll be so much happier once I have a job, I'll be so much happier once I found a place to live and all of this kind of things, but actually I probably won't. So it's really good to know that I can be working on my happiness right now and it doesn't all depend on that employment. And then the third one was don't just sit there, do something, which I think is a really important thing, and it's not something that's just unique to this book, but again it was really good for me right at this moment because I need to get up and I need to do something in order to get where I want. I need to apply for jobs, I need to work on my writing, I need to work on my photography, I need to do all of these little tasks. So overall I really enjoyed this book despite it being completely out of my comfort zone. And if you have any other kind of recommendations for this kind of non-fiction self-help book that isn't